Welcome, everybody, to the Mission Employable podcast, your headquarters for all things workforce here in Iowa. I'm Ben Oldak, joined by my co-host, Kathy Leggett. Hey, Kathy, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you today, Ben?
I'm doing well. How's your week been so far?
So far, so good. No snow, beautiful sunshine today.
Oh, I know.
Hopefully
I had weather
with
whiplash.
winter. Yeah.
Oh, it was bad.
Yeah, so
well,
going good.
For sure. And now on today's episode, we're going to be talking about a big issue which is facing working parents. Of course, we're talking about childcare. Now, in 2021, Governor Reynolds formed the Childcare Task Force to help businesses understand childcare needs of their employers and employees, while assembling resources to help them find solutions within their communities. One of the organizations assisting in that effort is the Iowa Women's Foundation, and we have Sheri Penney on the show to tell us more about the innovative ways to support more childcare options across the state. So, welcome to the show, Sheri. How's it going?
Great. Thank you so much for having me, and especially for talking about this such an important topic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've done a couple of different video stories about grant winners for the Child Care Challenge grant, and I mean, across the state, it is a huge issue facing both employers, employees, and everybody in between. So we're really happy to have you here.
Thank you.
First of all, just give us kind of an overview of what the Iowa Women's Foundation does and how it relates to childcare.
Sure. So the Iowa Women's Foundation really focuses on economic barriers to women and girls' self-sufficiency. And we started a tour back in about 2016 to travel across the state and figure out what are these economic barriers. They identified 6 of them. One of them was childcare. And then COVID happened. And as we all know, the world is flipped on its side. After we started to come out of being in lockdown, we got together and they went back to these same communities and said, okay, now we know what is still your top barrier. And over again, we kept hearing childcare because it all relates to childcare. You cannot find workers. People can't go to work. You have to have somewhere for your children to go. So that's kind of how the Women's Foundation really stepped up to the plate and decided that childcare is going to be the first barrier that we are going to tackle.
Yeah, and I just have to say, I'm so happy that Sheri is here. I've had the really good fortune to work with the Iowa Women's Foundation since I took this job, so that's 2018 since then. And we are so lucky in Iowa that we have this organization and that we have that they're doing the work they're doing, because there are multiple partners. The Women's Foundation is a huge leader, especially when it comes to employers. And again, just as everybody has stated, this is an issue that employers, employees, communities have to deal with. So I'm so excited, and so we just got to move on because we got to hear the great work that they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, speaking of that, tell us what are some of the main barriers to childcare that's common in both big communities, small communities, urban, rural, kind of across the board?
Sure. So some of the main barriers are going to be, right now we hear time and time again that our child care centers have wait lists, these long wait lists, and they do. But what we have found after a year of doing this work and really diving in deep into child care and talking with communities is that we do have communities that have wait lists for their child care centers, and they're at capacity for the staff that they currently have. What we have found is this is a staffing issue. This is a workforce issue. We have to be able to pay competitive wages to our workforce, childcare workforce staff, offering them benefits in order to keep and retain those workers. So I think that's probably been one of the largest barriers that we're seeing is the workforce. It's the wages and benefits.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. Like I mentioned before, I did a couple of stories on some of the grants and some of the expansions of the footprints of these centers. And while everybody said it was great, it's awesome, we needed to grow a little bit bigger in terms of like actual floor space, across the board, I heard the same thing, is that we need more workers and higher wages to compete. So with that being said, what are some examples of communities that are trying to come up with some innovative ways to do that, to increase wages or make them competitive, offer certain benefits that can bring people in and keep them?
Great question. We are seeing a ton of wonderful solutions from around this state. So I, as the employer engagement director, my position was created as a direct result, as you mentioned, from the governor's task force. So what I really do is travel around to these communities and provide one-on-one technical assistance. So what we're seeing is a lot of different variables because every community is so different. So I can't go into a community and tell you that they have the exact same plan because every community is different. I'm not the expert in the community. The community leaders are those experts. So what we're starting to see are flexible work arrangements, maybe allowing parents to work during school time hours if that's possible. We've seen some really great partnerships of businesses that are saying, we will allow our workforce that is able to work from home for the first 6 to 8 months of an infant's life. On the flip side of that, they have production staff. They're not able to work remotely or work from home. So what they did is they partnered with their local childcare center, purchased slots, and are paying 100% of production staff's childcare costs for the first 6 to 8 months. So even when you look at one specific industry, you're seeing 2 different benefits provided because it's not a one-size-fits-all. One of the most important benefits that we're starting to see are wage enhancement programs. These are so sustainable. It is because it becomes a community effort and a community coming together and saying, we have got to tackle this issue. We have to be able to find childcare workers. We have to value these workers, pay them competitive wages. But with childcare, the only cost revenue coming in is direct result of the parents. And so they can't keep raising these costs to parents because these parents can't afford to then work. So we're seeing that employers that offer some sort of childcare benefit are really keeping and retaining their employees up to 60% longer than companies that are not offering some sort of childcare benefit. We're seeing a lot of different examples, intergenerational care. We're seeing nursing homes, assisted livings that may have a wing that's sitting vacant or available. So they're actually saying, we'd love to take on some of those childcare partnerships and bring in the childcare center here. That's very rural communities that might not already have a center or their in-home providers have closed down. One of the last ones we're seeing that I just love is school districts. Rural Iowa is really, our school districts are really stepping up to the plate. What's great about school district partnerships is those enterprise funds. They're able to use enterprise funds to employ the director, and then eventually it trickles down to the staff. Now your directors are able to run a wonderful program. They are now having starting teacher pay. They have access to IPERS benefits because they're a school district employee. So now you're not having to share all of those. You're not losing your child care staff to paraeducators. You're able to go back and forth.
That's so, you just gave actually in that short clip so many cool things that are happening right here in Iowa. So I hope if you're listening and you have somebody to share this with as well, share it with employers, share it with community leaders, share it with economic development. This is an issue, as Sheri said, it's a community issue and it takes a community to solve it. We need all the partners, but the community is key. And one that Sheri, you and I were talking about right before we started the podcast was, and it was really around the wage enhancement program. And I think you said it was Hamilton County. And I wonder if you would tell us just a little bit more about that because as we said, the wages, that's a huge issue. And this is one solution that seems to really be having some success.
Absolutely. So in Hamilton County, their economic development professional kind of kept hearing childcare, housing over and over again. Well, housing is great, but they weren't bringing more people to the county unless they had childcare. So we've learned that childcare is kind of this stepping block for all of our communities. So what they did is they have an Enhance Hamilton County Foundation, a fund of 501c3 or 501c6, a nonprofit fund that businesses and employers are able to invest in that fund, as well as your community leaders, maybe your Main Street businesses that isn't going to have a ton of employees but can invest in this fund. What they are doing now, after, I want to say it, they're going on 4 years now, but what they have done is they have now raised those child care worker wages, and they are at $2.85 from where they started. Huge. And this is really picking up steam because this is going to keep all of the childcare issues and the sustainable project local. We love that the state has so many wonderful programs in place, but it's also best to keep some of that control local and then tap into those state resources because there are so many wonderful state resources, but that should be the icing on the cake, as I like to say. I like to see the sustainable program at the local level. And we're able to just see all of these businesses saying, this is a great idea. This way we can help impact the childcare in our community, keep it open and available for all of our workers, but we're not telling them exactly how they need to utilize a childcare benefit, because picking where you want to utilize childcare is so personal, and it's such an important family decision that our employers aren't wanting to tell their workers, this is where you need to go in order to receive this benefit. So this is something that we can continue to sustain long term. The cost is not falling to those parents who are your workers in your communities. And we're seeing in that instance, city councils, city boards of supervisors are also saying, we would love to help donate to these 501c3s and these enhancement programs. And I think that's where it's all hands on deck, and that's why they've been so successful. So much so that Johnson County has just announced their new wage enhancement program. And it looks different than Hamilton County because it's a different county. It's larger. They have more child care centers. But I think the most important thing for anyone listening, businesses, community leaders, you have to find that need. And the Women's Foundation can help you with that. We have surveys available. We have ways that we can help you understand what is the need in your community, how can we meet that need, and what does a sustainable plan look like. Maybe it's a little from community A over here and a little from community B over here, and you make it your own.
With that being said, how does a business get in touch with you, or how does a community council get in touch with you to get this process started?
Absolutely. So all of my information is going to be on our website at IAWF.org. And then in order to reach me individually, the best way is through email. That way we can create a follow-up and figure out, typically what happens is I will Zoom and do a virtual meeting. I work remotely out of North Iowa. So I like to meet them virtually or a phone call to really understand what they're looking for. Then I'm able to go ahead and provide some sort of, here's a menu of benefits that are happening across the state. Here's how we can figure out what your need is. Then let's form that plan. So my email is Sheri, SHERI, at IAWF.org.
That's so, and again, I want to just highlight again something that you said, but basically emphasize you have tools for people. They do not have to recreate the wheel. They don't have to figure out how to do an employee survey. They don't have to figure out how to do a community. You can help them. You have this already. So it's a matter of making that phone call, taking that first step, and then you guys are there to help get them on the road to an answer that will work for their community.
Absolutely. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes. And what's been so wonderful is when you work with the Women's Foundation, we really tap into our network of resources and those people. Even connecting you, because we are not the expert in everything. So what I really want to do is find out what's going on in the community and then help you tap into even those state resources. Have you connected with your CCR&R professionals? Have you connected with your business engagement directors from around the state? Are you connecting with your economic developers? So it's really figuring out what is going on and then making sure that you're connected to those resources. Once that plan is there, we're able to help you connect you with the community that has a similar plan so that we can really ask the experts, get some deep questions. But we have everything. We have a toolkit available for you. We have surveys. We have sample contracts. We have it all, and we're happy to provide it.
And the other thing, too, that I just want to mention is some of the fundamental, I guess, or base of the work that you did is an advisory group of employers for whom childcare has been a passion or an interest or a need, and that's been going on for quite a few years. And so I just think that has really well informed the work that you're doing. So it comes from, that area and so is definitely relevant for employers.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of the wonderful businesses that sit on our coalition are really instrumental in helping to guide this work. We really have that wonderful perspective of this is what our companies are feeling, this is what our companies are hearing, what can we do to help overcome this issue?
Yeah. What would your message be to parents who have been, waiting for childcare on these wait lists, have been experiencing some difficulty in this situation? What would be your message to them in the sense that, like, hey, we're working on this problem, we recognize that it's a problem, and this is how we're going to fix it?
To parents, I would definitely say reach out to your local leaders, reach out to your chambers, your economic development people to really start to have the conversation at a community level. If they're a parent looking for childcare, I would definitely direct them to Childcare Resource and Referral. They're going to be able to tell you all the providers in your area, those that are quality registered IQ4K providers in your area. But really just starting to have those conversations at a local level, talking to your chambers, talking to your economic developers, talk to your city council members so that they understand that this is an issue. And then give me a call or an email because I will help you. If you don't even know how to begin those conversations or you're just at a loss, let me know because there's a good chance. Right now we're working with over 60 communities all across the state. Over 140 businesses have reached out to understand how childcare is impacting their workforce. So there's a good chance we have already made contact with someone in your community or in your county that is already working on childcare. So I'm going to connect the two of you, and we're going to form a plan, and we're going to hold your hand every step of the way.
So, and again, just to highlight, anyone can be a catalyst for this. It can be the employer, it can be the city government, it can be the parents, so anyone can be the catalyst. The other thing that I want to share, and you can talk, I have two things, Sheri. One is that there are some shorter term solutions and there are some longer term solutions. So some of this work you have to get your head around. It takes some time. Yeah. So, so that's part of, I think, the thing you need to think about and have in your mind when you start working with this. But that time invested is going to be worth it because, as you said, this connects to everything. It connects to economic development, to workforce, to being able to earn, good wages, all of it. So keeping that in mind, the other thing that I wanted to have you talk about a little bit, because talking a little short term, I think that one of the examples that I've heard you talk about before was really this is our we work from 6 to 6, or this is our shift, okay? And the challenge we're having is that our childcare doesn't match our shifts, so we have parents who can't. So can you talk? I think you know what I'm probably talking about. But that was like a conversation. It was like, let's get together and see if we can figure something out. And then a solution was had. So just can you share about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So for childcare providers, there are line shifts, production staff typically, or your nursing staff. A lot of our hospitals
Yes.
are really buying in to this idea that they need to help with second, third shift care. So what they're doing is partnering with child care centers in the area. If they have spots available, again, you have to be able to have those workers that can work those extra hours. But what the employer is doing is maybe purchasing slots, so then they know that they have this operational cost coming in. They know that these slots are paid for, that those wages are then able to be used to bring on a new child care employee that can then work those shifts. So that's one example. Another example that doesn't cost employers anything is just figuring out that need. One of my favorite examples is an industry that I will not name. We presented to their business leaders and said, here's why you should care about childcare. This is a few years ago. And they said, that's great. We don't know that we really have an issue. Not even a week later, we get a call and they said, actually, I guess we do. Turns out the cops came. What had happened was their first shift and second shift had parents working 2 different shifts so that they didn't have to pay for childcare. There was a 30-minute window where the first shift had to report to work, and this is before the second shift was off. They were bringing the children, leaving them in the car with tablets or something, listening to the radio, and that way then when second shift got off, they would then take them home. Someone drove by, saw children sitting in a car, contacted that employer. And so all it took was shifting that time slot of when they needed to report by 30 minutes. Such an easy fix, didn't cost them any additional money. They're still working that shift. And those employees felt so valued because the employer cared. But that's not usually something you can talk about. You know, from an HR world, you cannot ask about families in interviews. You don't talk about those kinds of things. But what we're seeing is those employers that really do invest in their workers with all sorts of different benefits. Those are the employees that are staying and have that longevity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sheri, thank you so much for being here with us. That was a great conversation. I think certainly something that we all appreciate is the fact that childcare is still an issue here in the state. And I think what we appreciate even more now is the effort to kind of get this under control make this a really good state for childcare in the future. So thanks so much for dropping by, and we hope that people here listening to this will be able to give you a call, maybe put a little more work on your plate, but all for the greater good.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. So reach out to Sheri. I'm telling you, it's worth it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here.